And welcome back to the Hutchinson Report. I'm your host, Earl O'Farrill Hutchinson. Special guest today on the Hutchinson Report Newsmaker Hour is John Breshnahan, Capitol Bureau Chief for Politico.com. And needless to say, you can watch us on HutchinsonReport.tv. John, before we left, question politics. How much of a black eye for the Democratic Party? And will the GOP even make more hay out of the Rangel affair?
Look, I think the damage of what happened with Mr. Rangel has been played out over 2 years. I mean, the scandal started in the summer of 2008. I think it hurt the party somewhat, but I don't think it was a major blow to them. I mean, look, the Democrats went through the 2008 election. Obama won. They picked up seats in the House. They picked up seats in the Senate. I think it was a major drag. But as it unfolded, I think it became a distraction for them. You had the chairman of the powerful committee, again, an iconic figure inside Congress and in the African community and in his own district in New York politics. I mean, the man is is a major figure, and I think it did hurt. I don't think there'll be any long-term damage, other than the sense that I think you have a lot of independent voters who say, a pox on both their houses. Democrats are corrupt, Republicans are corrupt. A pox on both of them, and I think and I think that hurts. And they made the point in the hearing yesterday, and that was what the Ethics Committee lawyers made, and they acted as the prosecutors in this case, saying, look, what he did was undermine people's faith in government. The chairman of the powerful chairman, doing, these acts, and it's not by far not the worst corruption case ever, but when he's doing this stuff, it hurts the average citizen says, just shakes his or her head and says, enough with these guys. It just hurts the standing of government overall. I think it rather than individually, I think it's a part of a collective kind of just a distress that Americans feel about their government. I mean, look at the ratings for Congress. They're as bad as they've ever been, and I think this just kind of feeds into that.
Well, John, the other thing, too, when you talk about how the American people see Congress, and, of course, the absolute abominable ratings that Congress has now, it's in the 20 percentile range. Still, it hasn't affected Charles Rangel with, as he has said on more than one occasion, at the end of the day, the constituents that count the most are the ones that vote for me and put me back in office. I have been reelected 20 times. I've served in Congress 40 years, going back to 1970. Even with the scandal, even with great attention that's been paid to him negatively, all negative, of course, and even now that in many circles he's a poster child for corruption in Congress, 80% of the constituents, i.e. the voters in Harlem and beyond his congressional district, put him back in office. By the way, against a spirited challenge, ironically, from Adam Clayton Powell IV. So what do we make of this when we have someone who's damaged goods politically, got a bad name, tainted, but 80% of the voters still put him back in? What's to say about the voters and their so-called lack of faith in Congress?
Yeah, well, you got to give it to Rangel. I mean, you mentioned he survived that tough primary challenge from Adam Clayton Powell IV. I mean, he was the son of the man Charlie Rangel beat in 1970 on as a reformer. Where the Powell Sr. had his own problems. He had some corruption issues. Rangel comes in 1970. He's a former U.S. attorney. Here's this bright, shining guy, and a war hero, Korean War hero, and he's going to be a reformer. And then 40 years later, he's running against Adam Clayton Powell IV in the middle of a corruption scandal or an ethics scandal himself. I mean, look, the people of his district are clearly comfortable with them. There was a number who weren't. Once he won the Democratic primary, and it was a tough race, but he got through. Once he won that, the general election was a cakewalk for him. The registration gap in that district is enormous in favor of the Democrats, so it wasn't really an issue. But I think it's just that they're comfortable with Rangel. They knew most of they knew the information about the charges. That wasn't a punishment. He wasn't actually found guilty, but they were aware of the charges. They looked at it. There was a lot of ads. There was a lot of campaigning, a lot of politicking. They knew it. They said, what? Rangel's done a lot more for us than Judge this. We look at the man for 40 years and look at his whole entire career and his life and say, they returned him. So I think there was some, sympathy. There's some inertia. People grew up. I mean, it's 2 generations of people in the district that are represented by Charlie Rangel now. So, Charlie Rangel has been the congressman for a lot of people in that district their entire lives. So, they're used to him. So, I think they probably thought, the press is playing this up. That is one thing I think Rangel did yesterday. He did attack the press, which I thought, look, he gets some pretty hard coverage back home in New York with the New York Post and the Daily News, especially the Post. He's been vilified in the Post. But, I think that the press has, honestly, I think they've treated Charlie Rangel pretty well. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. Let me put it that way.
And I think he realizes that too. But when you saw Charlie Rangel, when you saw him, you're sitting right there, you're looking at him, you're looking at the committee members. What was his mood? Because when I saw pictures of him, I saw a man with his head down, a man clearly looked like a beaten man. Did you get that impression?
I felt the exact same way. Defeated, dejected. At one point, a congressman from Vermont, Peter Welch, a Democrat, said, loud Rangel said, what do you, I'll give you my time. You say whatever you want. It took time because I went back and looked. It was 30 seconds. He sat there for 30 seconds trying to gather himself. I mean, this is a man who almost lost his life in Korea. This is a man whose whole career is politics. This is a man who's been in tough fights before, and it took him 30 seconds to gather himself. He really, I thought, really, losing it, and emotionally, and then he got up, and he was very eloquent. He's always been an eloquent man, and he spoke, and then he walked out. So we were trailing him down the hall. There was a horde of reporters, and then I ended up getting in the elevator with him a couple of, by accident, me and a couple other reporters, and we're sitting in the elevator, and he didn't say a word. He just said to his staffer, it was funny, he said to one of his staffers, "You're right." And he was talking about how they should have walked out of the room a different way. That was it. That's all he said. He didn't even look at us. I mean, this was a dejected, defeated man, I think. I mean, for someone who's 80 years old like Rangel, who's given his whole life to Congress, I mean, yeah, he'll still be a member next year. He's been reelected, and there's no issue there. But to have to stand in the well of the House and be publicly condemned by the Speaker for his actions here, I think that is just a blow. Because now, when the time comes, whatever that is, his obituary will say Charlie Rangel, the once reforming congressman from New York who found himself, whose career was overshadowed by an ethics scandal. And that matters. Legacy matters.
And it certainly does. It certainly mattered with parallels that were drawn with Adam Clayton Powell this week. Now, John, we only got a couple of minutes left, so I want to go through a couple of quick things here. Maxine Waters, I did promise we'd come back on that. If we can, just in just a few seconds, Maxine, your opinion, will she, I think you said a little bit earlier that they'll be a little more gentle with her. What do you mean by that?
Well, my guess is it could go either way. They could play the hard line, or my guess is that, look, Waters is a good case. She has a good argument to make. I think she has a much stronger argument than Rangel did, and she's not going to be shy about it. She's fought them all the way through, so I think it's easier, I think, for them members to say, look, I could be in the same situation she is. I tried to help out a constituent, and it came back and bit me in the butt. And I think I think she's going to have a stronger argument to make. So I think we're going to see. I think the dynamics will be different for her, and I think it'll be better for her.
All right. So the final question, we got about 1 minute left. By the way, my guest, Hutchinson Report, John Breshnahan, EZ Capitol Bureau Chief of Politico.com. John, the punishment of censorship, I want to just go back to that with the final seconds we have. It's a harsh punishment. Now, reprimand would have been a possibility. Newt Gingrich, he was reprimanded in 1997, Representative Barty Frank, Massachusetts. Also, he was reprimanded in 1990. When you really look at no financial gain, I think you said that before, rent-controlled rates, that's not financial gain. I mean, he didn't just stuff money like a certain congressman we know, into a freezer. Could was reprimand ever a possibility? And perhaps should that have been more appropriate? We only got about 30 seconds left, John. Your thought?
Yes, it was absolutely a possibility. There was an investigating the members who did the investigation are different than the members who actually voted on the punishment. And the ones who did the investigation said, we recommended reprimand. And that included Joe Bonner, a Republican who bashed Rangel pretty hard yesterday. I think there was a long time that the reprimand was on the table, but I think, Rangel walking out and the thing over the lawyer and all that, I think that just kind of hardened the attitude against him. So I think reprimand was definitely on the table, and then at the end, Rangel's attitude kind of at the end, I think, hurt him with the members of the committee.
All right. John, listen, we appreciate you taking the time for your very busy schedule to join us on the Hutchinson Report. You have a standing invitation. Needless to say, these issues aren't going to go away. We want to bring you back from time to time to get your expert commentary on the doings on Capitol Hill. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Really loved talking to you guys.
All right. Take care now. That was John Breshnahan. He is the Capitol Bureau Chief for Politico. By the way, you can watch us on HutchinsonReport.tv. We're also archived, HutchinsonReport.tv. So if you missed it, tell a friend, tell an acquaintance, tell an associate. You can watch us, HutchinsonReport.tv. Also, we're archived Blog Talk Radio. That's the Hutchinson Report on blogtalkradio.com. And also YouTube, too. We'll have excerpts from this up on YouTube. And then we have an announcement to make, too, that we're going to be expanding the Hutchinson Report nationally. We're going to have a national reach in the Washington, D.C. area. Politics is so big. We've got a new civil war brewing in America over the next 2 years. The Hutchinson Report Newsmaker Hour will be right on top of that. We will bring you leading newsmakers, opinion makers, political leaders, not only from the West Coast, Midwest, Washington, D.C. You'll hear it first on the Hutchinson Report. Special thanks today to Pedro Baez. Would you like to say a quick word to the audience?
Oh, thank you very much, Earl, and good morning to everybody. I certainly hope that the audience is enjoying what we're doing here, because it's here just for you.
All right. Pedro Baez, of course, he's the glue that holds us all together. Doug, we thank you this morning for making the Hutchinson Report TV on Ustream certainly a possibility for Nolan Hutchinson, Blog Talk Radio, and our producer and also our board operator. Kind of wore two hats this morning. We thank him, too. Leo's out today. He'll be back next week. We hope anyway.
Yes.
Well, too. All right. You're listening to the Hutchinson Report. I'm your host, Earl O'Farrell Hutchinson. By the way, if you missed us today, you can also catch our rebroadcast. We're rebroadcast Saturday evening, same station, KTYM.com on the stream, and KTYM 1460 AM, 6:30 p.m. All right, until next week, your host, Earl O'Farrell Hutchinson. Stay strong, stay positive. Most important, stay engaged, and have a great weekend.
Adelante.